You're good when we get what we want, and you're good when we don't. Father, you are good when life hits us upside the head and it kind of spins us and we don't know where we're going to stop and what just happened, but you're still good.
Amen.
So you're good. All the time, God is good. And you are good when the craziness of life captures us and seems not to let us go. But it's in those times where the goodness of God is birthed in us because we can't turn anywhere else but you. You're the only hope. You're all we got. And so you're good, even in the dark. That's where God shines His greatest light, is in dark places. So shine your light. So there's some in this room this morning, you don't even know why you're here, but He knows. And I can assure you, my friend, He's got what you need. We don't have anything for you, but He does. And for those that came for all the wrong reasons, trust me, He's going to spin it around and show you. Here's what I want to tell you. So Father, here's my prayer, and it's Psalm 19, verse 14. And it says, let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be pleasing and acceptable unto your sight, my God, my rock, and my Redeemer. So this morning, may our total goal as individuals, as couples, as families, is to simply do this. I want to please you with the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart. Come, Lord Jesus. Speak thou, O Lord, because your kids are listening to what you've got to say. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. God bless you. You can quietly be seated. Wow. Amen. Wow. Aren't you glad He's in charge?
Amen.
Well, you know, I know we have some guests this morning, and I really want to get you up to speed real quick, and so you're not kind of lost in transition. But we started this series a few weeks ago, and the first week we talked about and we defined what is a biblical marriage. I mean, we took the Bible and biblically took apart and defined what is a biblical marriage. And in that session, here's what we said. We said there's the cultural view of marriage, there's my view of marriage, and then there's the biblical view of marriage. And so we had to make a decision that morning, and I challenged you that morning to decide which view are you going to follow. And don't have time to redo that sermon, but that's what we did. The second week, we talked about this very simple topic is a biblical marriage possible? And I hope you were here. I want to clarify something that I really believe leads us to this third week, which is probably the one week we're all going to struggle. And I know you've seen the heading, but it's on communication. Now, we're going to hit some stuff today, and you're going to think we're talking about communication between husbands and wives, but friend, let me tell you something. This isn't about just husbands and wives. This is about friend to friend, mom to dad, dad to daughter, daughter to dad. I mean, this covers every gamut of communication to whoever you're speaking with, and you might want to take some really good notes because you're going to find something out about yourself today that you might not know. But last week we said these words, and I want to hit them real quick. It says, we know, we agree with this, and let me see if you agree with me. We know how to manipulate relationships. Is that a true statement or not? Because we all know what we want. We know what we want it now. And here's what we'll do. We'll get what we want. One way or the other. Y'all want me to sing that song I sang to you last week? One way or another. Okay. Get you. Okay. Y'all don't want me to do that again, do you? Okay. I was kind of getting started, so y'all are getting revved up. And so we know how to manipulate to get what we want. And then here's what we said. We said there are those who are very vocal manipulators. Those who don't, they don't make any bones about it. They're not hiding it. They're just manipulating. They're very vocal about it. But the people who scare me the most And Nancy and I have been doing this for a long time. We've been doing counseling for a very long time. And I find the people who scare me the most are the people who are what I call silent manipulators. Now, somebody I can feel, somebody already moving in their seat going, please don't look over here. Whatever you do, don't focus on me. But you know, we're silent manipulators. You know, that's that person who's calm, who's full of grace and mercy, and you know, they just seem to be the sweetest human being on the planet. But they know how to get what they want, and they want it. Now they're just silent about it. But see, in communication, you know, most of the time we know what we want to say, but we don't really know how to say it correctly. We know what information we want, and then sometimes we know the information we want to give, but we mess up how we do it. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Did you ever hear that old saying, your mouth moved before your brain engaged? Anybody, you know, other than John? That doesn't happen to you, I know, but to everybody else. That's right, that's the table of John.
Oh, John.
And then we
Two
go
of them.
how in there. Okay. But you know, it happens. You say something, and in the moment you say it, what do? I just messed up. You know, who said that? I want to show you a little clip real quick of communication.
Took me 2 years of marriage to figure out my wife will never tell me to do anything around our house. She wants me to do something, she'll ask me a question. From the question, I'm supposed to stand there and figure out what it is she wants me to do. Simple example, say I leave a pair of my underwear in the middle of the bedroom floor, which frosts my wife. That's her favorite word. Someone will cut her off on the highway. Oh, that frosts me. And if I'm not frosting her, I'm driving her up a wall. That's another one. Kids will come in. Where's Mom? She's up the wall with frostbite. That's all I know. You won't believe what put her there, son. It was that pair of underwear in the middle of the bedroom floor. Boy, you look at the most powerful pair of underwear known to mankind. They not only defy gravity, but they change temperatures. So leave my drawers in the middle of the room. Would my wife come to me and say to me, pick those up? That's 3 words. Pick those up. Would she say them? No, because that would be simple, direct, right to the point. And I, her husband, would know exactly what she wants from me. I'd be able to process the information, make a rational decision as to whether or not I could deliver her request. You see, at that point, we would be communicating at the highest human level. Through language. My wife will look at me, look at my underwear, and then ask me, are those yours? I sure hope they are, otherwise I got a few questions in my own. What do you want? That is every man's question to the woman he loves. What do you want? Just tell me, what do you want? Quit talking in code and tell me what you want. If I have to tell you what I want, then it doesn't mean a whole lot to me now, does it? Many a night I've walked around my house with a coat hanger strapped to my skull. Boys are going, what are you doing, Dad? I'm trying to divine what your mother wants. There's got to be a signal in his home somewhere. So wrap me in tinfoil, it'll make me a better conduit.
True or not? Just tell me what you want. Now, ladies, I got one coming for you in just a minute, so don't take that I just picked one that, but we all do that. Just tell me what you want. Don't talk in code. Don't ask me a question. You know, 2 questions don't have an answer. You know, just tell me what you want. Now, I want to say something to you. We've had more fun over the last 10 days, you know, putting this together because it was, well, I can't tell you too much because I get in trouble, but we'll talk about this. Oh, are you communicating? You're not communicating. Did you say something? Did you know, was there an answer to that question? And here's what I want you to know something. I want to tell y'all something. To get Miss Nancy up here for 2 weeks, you probably am working on 3. I want y'all to know something. It's costing me big. I'm paying for you. So I must really like you to pay the price to get Miss Nancy up here. but I think you're worth it. So if you got your hand out, let's start. I want to give you that verse again that I gave to you in the prayer. And it's Psalm 19, verse 14. Here's the goal. And it's simply this: let the words of your mouth and the meditation of your heart be pleasing and acceptable unto thy sight. My Lord, my God, my rock and my redeemer. Let your words and the meditation, what comes out of your heart, be pleasing and acceptable. So there's a little thing here on a scale of 1 to 10. I'm going to ask you some questions, and I need you to score it. Now, I'm fixing to throw you a curve. So right now, I need everybody, I'm watching you, because I know some of you. I know how you do. I figured you out. If you're married in this room, now, and I know who's married and who's not. If you're single, you got to do this on your own. But if you're married, I need you to switch your card real quick with your partner. Right now. Real quick. I don't see them moving. If I don't see them moving, I'm not going to keep going. Switch your card with your spouse. Everybody do it? And if you're single, you're just going to have to do this on your own. But here's what I need you to do. When I ask you these questions, I don't want deep thought scores. Scale of 1 to 10. I want whatever comes to your brain to be written on this card. There's a reason. But if you have to sit there and go, well, let me think, and it depends on what day. You know, no, I don't need all that. I just need you to score this. You ready? Here's the questions. How well do you communicate? You know, you're scoring for your spouse or yourself if you're single. How well do you communicate? 1 to 10. Everybody following the instructions? Okay, this is not for you if you're married. If you are single in the room, it is for you. So get going. Here's the second question. How well do you listen? And hey, watch this. Now, I've already seen the eyes looking at each other like, now watch this. Everybody, eyes on the pastor. I just saw something that scares me. Here we go. Manipulators, I just caught you. You're thinking to yourself, well, I need to make sure that I score this right because, you know, I won't. No. You're not helping your partner if you're kind of doing the curve. Like my teacher used to do, great on the curve kind of deal. No, you need to be dead honest. I caught you. I watched your eyes like, I want to make sure he knows how much I love him. So it's a 10. No, if he's a 1, he's a 1. Right? Because sometimes we get in the trouble we're in because we won't be honest with each other. And see, some of you men, I know what you're thinking. You end up doing your own clothes if you don't score this well. I got you. Brother, trust me, the clothes will get done. So here's the second part. Here we go. How much do you communicate? Now, ladies, I know y'all fixing to nail that one. How much do you communicate? The fourth one is, how much do you listen? All right, now hand it back to your spouse, please. Yeah, you have to. I'm sorry. And we do have a defibrillator back in the back if we need to jumpstart anybody after you read. You know, yeah. Kevin, I know if you pass out, we'll get you started. Yeah, you could use negative numbers. That's true. That's true. Wow. Nancy and I do have a few openings this week. We'll plug y'all in. George Bernard Shaw, and folks, listen to this quote. George Bernard Shaw said this: the idea of communication, or the single thing about communication, is the illusion that it's actually taking place. It says the single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it's actually taking place. See, some of us have been married a long time, 34 years. Some of us have been married a short period of time. Some of us have been married in the middle somewhere. But it's the illusion that I know how to communicate, I know what to communicate, and I know when to communicate. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to break this up into 2 parts. There's 2 parts of communication, and the first one is words. Ecclesiastes 5, you might want to read this chapter this week. But it says, let your words be few. Anybody struggle with that? Let your words be few. Hello. Anybody struggle with, okay, anybody got the gift of talking? Okay, anybody got that gift that I'm going to keep talking until you shall come? Okay, you're going to give in one way or the other. Y'all want me to sing another song? No, okay, here we go. The second part says, make a vow, V-O-W, to God, and do not be late in paying Him. So when you say something, when you use words, when you make a promise, when you say something that you're committed to, then you need to do it. And today we're going to do that kind of at the end. The third one says, let your speech, Colossians 1:4-6, be with grace. Let your speech always be with grace. And I love this last one, Ecclesiastes 5:2. Do not be hasty with words. That's a big word that you might want to underline, the word hasty, because we're going to kind of get on that one. And all of you have heard the old adage, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. That's the worst thing that has ever been said, because it's so untrue. You know, we say, did your grandmother say that to you? Well, don't worry about what that little boy said to you at school, because sticks and stones may break your bones, but words will never hurt you. That's a bunch of crap. That's a bunch of hooey. Because they do hurt, don't they? And in many cases, more than broken bones. Because here's what I know. Broken bones heal. Broken hearts are a big difference. Okay? So we're going to talk about that. So, have you ever heard this from your mom or your grandmother or somebody? Do you hear me? How about this one? Are you listening? There's a difference between hearing something and listening to something. We're going to talk about that. There's a difference between hearing and a difference between listening. Mark chapter 4 verse 9 says, he who has an ear to hear, let them hear. Now I'm going to skip on down to see that little green thing there in the bottom. It says there is a difference between having ears and having ears to hear. Think about that for a second. That'll seep in. There's a difference between having ears and having ears to hear. Most of us in this room, unless you've lost one of them, you have two of those hanging on the sides of your head. Just because you have them doesn't mean they function correctly. Amen. Just because they're hanging there doesn't mean that you're using them correctly. Now watch this. All of us in this room that I look around have one of these. Just because you have a mouth doesn't mean you use it correctly. Can you see? Let's go back to the first lesson that we did 2 weeks ago. What is a biblical marriage? What are biblical relationships? Part of God's design for biblical relationships, He gave us these so that we can hear and to listen, but He also gave us this to speak. But the question is, what are we speaking? What words are we using? What promises have we made? When you make a vow, be quick into fulfilling that. I mean, so we really need to step back and think about our lives. And so here's what I'm asking you to do. I'm asking you to individually think about you. Not your spouse, but you. Remember we said last week, it was in that little note page, the last thing, was if this relationship isn't right, this one's in trouble. And you know what we do about this one? We fake it for a long time. You know, we do. We're pretty good at it. And then here's what we do. We can kind of get along for a while. And then we just kind of become partners. We live in the same home. We go to the same events. Watch this. This is really going to blow your mind. And we even go to church together. But there's no connection. Somehow we lost that love and feeling. Hello? Y'all want me to sing that one? You've lost that love and feeling. Okay. Y'all catch the drill. But how do you do that? Is that a process over time? Yes, it is. Trust me. You do lose that loving feeling. You lose that thing that you thought was so important to you at the expense of the things that came out of your mouth and the things you chose not to listen to. You heard, when my mother would go, "Did you hear me?" I heard her. I just didn't listen to what she said. Because here's what I know. Back in the day before video games and we had 3 TV channels, and I'm kind of giving away my age. So we stayed outside all the time. I mean, all the time. That was not like, we didn't want to be in the house. We didn't even have air conditioning. I'm telling you how bad it was for me. I didn't have air conditioning until Nancy and I got married. You know what we had? It was called an attic fan. And if you shut all the doors upstairs, boy, you could get a draft going until one of your brothers or sisters came home and started opening the doors upstairs, and then a fight broke out because you lost your air. But that be that as may, I never fought anybody. But so what happened to us is we stayed outside, and here's what you hear your mother say: "Hey, it's time to eat." Did she say it? Did you hear it? Yeah. What'd you do? You had a choice to make, to respond to it or not, to listen. The worst spankings I got was when I would say this to her. Here, none of y'all did this. Watch this. This is classic. You know, but I didn't hear you. Got my little hiney tore up. Because what did I just do? I just lied. I heard her. I just chose not to respond. So here's the second part of this. So it says, he who has an ear to hear, let him hear. What is the Greek word? It's the word akeo. It's a verb tense to say this. It means this: to pay attention to. The second line says to give heed to. The third definition is to be informed. My mother definitely informed me. And then here's the one that I struggle with, and some of you in this room. It's the act of learning. Now over at the left-hand side, there's a little blue box. And it says hear, or the word underneath that is the word listen. Are you hearing or are you listening? Big difference. So to hear is to listen is to learn, and to hear so that we can obey. Isn't that the way this is supposed to work with our relationship with God? I hear you, but I got to listen to you. I got to listen so that I can learn your ways. Remember, watch this verse. For your ways are not my ways, right? So that I can inevitably do what for God? Obey Him. Do you know that's no different than the way that Nancy and I are supposed to interact with each other? I'm listening so I can learn what makes Nancy happy, how she communicates to me, so inevitably I obey not Nancy, but I obey the command from God to honor her, to nourish her, to cherish her. And here's what I can tell you we said 2 weeks ago. I brought into this marriage some unhealthy things that I had learned from the culture around me. Raised by a single mom all my life. Had what's called an absentee father. So I reached out and grabbed any kind of model I could find, and I brought it into this relationship. And it took a while for Nancy to unspin it and help me figure it out, along with, of course, the Lord. But I had some real unhealthy things that I brought. So did Nancy. And I know y'all think she's just perfect. I know y'all think she just dropped straight from heaven. I used to say to her when I was dating her and courting her, I'd go, does heaven know you're missing? Right? I didn't know angels flew this low. That's all. Right? Are you listening? You see, what happened was we were unhealthy in certain ways. And what happens to unhealthy people create unhealthiness. And we had to work on some things. And I just want you to know she's not perfect. Let me give you the last thing. I had to throw that in there. Here's the thing that I had to learn. And I want you to write this somewhere. I had to learn to listen. And that's a big one for most of us in this room. Because here's what our response is. Watch this. Most of the time when somebody's speaking to us, whether it's our spouse, another person, your boss, a friend, co-worker, enemy, whatever, here's what we do. We're already processing the response before they ever finish what they're saying. So in essence, here's what you've done. You've not really heard a word they've said, because you're busy processing the response. Because here's what happens most of the time. We want to be right. Right? We want to be right. Heck with that other stuff. We want to be right. And I'm going to make sure, because did you hear me? Yeah, I heard you. No, you didn't listen to me. Because you were already processing what you wanted to say in return. Now, I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand. I'm putting both my hands up. My number one problem, and my mentor pointed it out to me years and years ago, and he said, you're not listening to Nancy. I said, what do you mean? She talks all the time. I listen to her all the time. He said, no, you didn't hear what she said. Really? He said, I watched you. Nancy would be talking and you'd start talking. How could you hear what she said while you were already talking? I didn't realize I had that problem. Here's another problem I didn't realize. I would speak over Nancy. Now, is this what was said here stays here kind of thing? I hope so, because I don't want to hear anybody quoting me. And what a horrible human being he is. Well, I am. You can quote me. I used to speak over her. I used to not let her finish her sentences. Bad, Robbie. But somebody had to teach me. Somebody had to point out to me that I did that to the person I love more than anybody on the planet. And I didn't realize what I was doing to Nancy. I wasn't nourishing. Remember Ephesians last week? I wasn't raising her up. I wasn't bringing her, because my words were doing what? Suppressing her. Keeping her at bay. Keeping her where I wanted her to be, not where God intended her to be. And so I had to learn to listen. I wrote this little note to Robbie, just so I wouldn't forget. I have to train my ears to hear. And it took me a long time. Once he pointed this out to me, and some of you in the room, I've shared this with you in times we've been together. Even when I was in my early years of the pastorate, people would come to me and would saying things to me, and I'm already thinking what I'm going to tell you. Because you know what? The pastor always had to have an answer. You know one of the most freeing things that ever happened to me was to say these words to you? I don't know. It was like deja vu, like somebody took those stone tablets and took them off around my neck. When I finally got comfortable after my mentor said, you don't have to have an answer. Oh my God. You mean you're telling me when somebody asks me something, the pastor's not supposed to have an answer? He said, you can't know everything. Here's what you say. You know what? Let me think about that. Let me pray about that. Let me go look at it and I'll come back to you. I mean, it was like, oh my God, are you kidding me? So when when Nancy asks me something, I don't have to get, honey, I don't know. I mean, hello. That was incredible. That was a aha moment. That I don't have to have the answers. I've got to train my ears to hear. And here's the other thing. And some of you might struggle with this. Is your heart receptive to listen? Is your heart receptive? Because if it's not, you got to train your heart. And here's the Bible says in Proverbs 4, it says, guard your heart with all diligence, for out of it flows all the issues of life. We haven't guarded our heart enough. And then the issues of life start flowing out of it, and we get ourselves in trouble. So, and then I'm going to tie it all together with this one verse, James 4:8. And in James 4:8 it says this, draw near to God, and He will draw near to you. So how are we going to train ourselves? By drawing near to Him. And I didn't say draw near to the coolest book that's been printed, the coolest new author who's come down the pipe, but draw near to God, and He'll draw near to you. What I learned was what I didn't have in the deficit of our relationship, God could show me if I was willing to be honest. And this is a huge one. If I was really willing to be honest about the deficits that I had in direct contrast to our relationship. And there were a lot of them. Two things happened as we started going through this. I started confessing those to Nancy. And I started asking this, will you forgive me? And will you help me? And those times where I slip up and forget, I'm a work in process. I'm trying to train myself. And she would help me. Because you know what? I wanted our relationship to be what God intended it to be. And I'd been married for almost 10 years before I realized that I was doing it all the wrong ways. Now, I'm telling you that. It took somebody to come into my life who was willing to be honest with me, an older gentleman who poured his life into me, put his finger on the things I didn't want him to put his finger on, say the things to me I didn't want to hear, hurt, in my mind, hurt my heart in some places, but he wasn't hurting me. But the truth hurts, doesn't it? And I had to face that truth. So if you'll flip this over, I want to give you a definition, and then Miss Nancy's going to kind of share with you the different levels and the successful communication. But the definition of communication is the imparting and the open exchange of information. And I wrote this to myself underneath that. I don't know if you want to. And I wrote the word expectation. See, I have an expectation about the imparting, and I have an expectation about the information. I'm expecting a response when I share information. I'm also have an expectation when somebody imparts things to me. But here's what it says. Effective communication is a learned response. And for some of you, you need to write that 2 or 3 times. You got to learn how to do this. You've got to learn to how to be an effective communicator. Because the way you're doing it isn't getting it. Now, here again, let me use me as the punching bag. I thought I had it all together. I thought I was the coolest husband on the planet. I thought I was the greatest father that God had ever created. Boy, was I so wrong. God taught me how to communicate with my children. God told me how to listen to my kids rather than talk to my kids. You ever heard this statement? Are you talking to me? Or are you talking at me? Anybody got that problem? Do you ever feel as the receiver of that, you're just talking at me, you're not talking to me? Yeah, amen, or I mean, some of you look at me like I just said something foreign. You're talking at me, you're not talking to me. I had to learn that, especially with my children. I'm the daddy and you're the kid. Because I came from that generation where, the old belt thing was used quite often. Anybody remember that? They used to use a belt. I don't know what they use now, but they used to use one of those. Right? And I know now you're not supposed to, I guess you don't use belts now because you don't want to hurt his self-esteem. I mean, hello. I mean, look how I turned out. I mean, come on. But you see what happens? So there comes this point where we have to learn it. And I'm going to give you 2 things, and then I want you to think about it. Number 1 says communication with purpose. What do I mean by communication with purpose? Simply this. I've got something to say to you that has purpose, that has meaning, that has value. That's something that I believe is very important for me to say. And in this case, I'm going to use Nancy. I've got a purpose in what I need to say. The second one says this, communication with intent. Intent. Here's this other kind of communication. I say things to intend to hurt her. I don't know if you do that. But I use my words to get my point across. That's not purpose. See, Jesus spoke to us with purpose. Y'all, everybody look at me. He spoke every time to us with purpose. He never spoke to us in intent. He never intended to hurt us when he spoke to us. He never intended to cause you to think any differently about yourself based on what he thought of you. He spoke to us in purpose. And why do we speak to somebody who we love with intent to get our point, hurt, watch this, silent manipulator, get what I want? There's intent to your communication. There's a reason for your communication. And I want you to start thinking about this learned response to be a person who communicates with purpose. My purpose is to love you. My purpose is to encourage you. My purpose is to build you up with my words, not tear you down. You see the difference? There's a purpose rather than I'm just going to rapid fire give Nancy what I think and hurt her in the crossfire of my bullets of my words, rather than stepping back and say, you know what? I want to speak to my beautiful wife with purpose, not with intent. Now, some of you kind of going, I'm going to have to process that one. I want you to, because most of us speak with intent. And that's a very selfish way to communicate. I want to show you another video, and that kind of, ladies, you'll enjoy this. So I'm getting brownie points from you ladies. Y'all kind of see what you think about this one. And think about purpose and intent.
But I think we should leave them with a song about communication.
All right, he was gonna
I
do
think
a
it's a
song?
really good way to round this show out, to close it down to a song about communication.
Okay.
What do you think?
I think so, yeah.
Well, we're both going to be in it. It's for both of us to do.
It's like the minivan thing?
Yeah, except for when it's your turn, I will point to you and you'll know your parts. Okay? It'll be good. It'll be like fun and improv-y.
All right,
Let's do
so
like a
what-
communication song.
I like
Yeah.
this. You like this?
Yeah, this
All
will
right,
be fun.
So what am I gonna do?
I'm going to point to you and you'll know your part.
Okay.
Just wait, hang tight,
All
and
right.
we'll get to you, okay?
Okay.
All right, here we go.
Communication song.
Yes.
Ironically, I've never discussed it. But we're gonna do it.
It's gonna be good. Okay. Why don't you listen?
Can I just start with
Yes.
quick?
Yeah.
Why don't you listen? That is a terrible way to start a song.
It wasn't very nice that you just said.
I'm just saying, if I'm driving down the road and I hear Why Don't You Listen, I'm changing the channel. I mean, every guy in here is like, that's going to end badly, you know? I mean,
I don't think they were. I think they were just listening.
I
All right.
got my hand to the pulse of
All right, I got it.
RMCC here.
I got it. Let me try again.
Okay.
One more time.
Beautiful.
Okay. Why don't you listen?
Am I going to be in this?
Yes,
Well, I thought
you're
we
in
agreed
it.
to take
It's
it
not
out.
your-
I thought we agreed
You
like,
didn't agree to
we
take
talked
it out.
about it.
No, I listened to what you had to say,
Yeah.
and then I went ahead and did what I was going to do anyway.
That's a marriage.
Just let me finish the phrase. It'll make more sense when I get to the end.
Well, let me
okay?
just
Then
go on
it'll be-
record
Uh-huh.
as saying that we object to the Why Don't You Listen part of the song.
Okay, objection
Okay.
noted.
Have at it.
One more time.
Have at it.
Why don't you listen? It makes it hard to tell you what to do.
What kind of song is this? It's very passive aggressive.
Really? No.
I just think it's very pretty, the music, but the words are kind of jabby.
Why don't you give in?
Yeah.
I won't give up till you do. Let's do this my way.
No choice.
I know in time you'll see I'm right. We shouldn't fight this fight again. 'Cause I'm gonna win.
I don't think I'm in the song.
I just need to hear you say it won't take long if you could lay aside your pride and admit your, help me ladies, wrong. Thank you.
How do you know the song?
They're married, honey. They all know this song. Go ahead. It's your part. Go ahead.
Now, okay, yeah. Rhymes with wrong. It's a chicken. It's a bird.
I told you he'd know his part.
I am ready to pounce now.
You ready now? You ready? All right. You know the rules now. Can't go to sleep if there's a fight. And I've had my coffee. I'm prepared to stay up all night until you admit I'm. Thanks for finishing that up for me, ladies.
You guys are doing a fantastic audience. Thank you for coming out tonight.
It's funny, but it's true, isn't it? Robbie said something a little bit earlier about how much fun we've had this week, and I see it totally different. I found out that whenever I have to teach something, God teaches it to me first. So I'll be honest with you, it's been a hard week because I've been under a lot of conviction about the way I speak to Him. So, start that way.
Hallelujah, my prayers have been echoed. Wrong response.
Yeah,
Y'all see
that
that?
was Anyway, we'll start kind of going through the levels of communication real quick, and then I really want to kind of focus on the latter part. So in your handout, I'm not very good at this, so remind me if I skip something. These are different levels of communication, starting at the very bottom and working up to what we really want in our relationships. And this is for everybody. This is not just for husbands and wives. This is for the way we speak with friends, with our children. And I'm going to kind of put the slant of husband and wife on it. But the first one is basic information. And that's, oh, by the way, the dog ate your fishing pole today, or by the way, the kids are going to spend the night at grandma's house. You know, just basic information. The second one is like a partnership. I'll call Robbie and say, hey, on the way home, can you pick up a gallon of milk? And he'll say, hey, would you mind balancing the checkbook? Because we are in a partnership and we need to be doing for each other. The third one is conflict resolution. And this will happen in every relationship. If you're in a relationship with someone, you're going to be in conflict at one point of your life. One of my favorite examples of this is, I remember Ruth Graham, Billy Graham's wife, being interviewed one time. And the interviewer asked him, he said, do you and Mr. Graham agree on everything? And she said, heck no. She said, if we agreed on everything, then one of us is not necessary, which is true. In every relationship, we're going to have conflict. And I'll spend a little bit of time on this one just because this is a hard part for me because I don't like conflict. I run from conflict. So I have to look at what my motivation is. In a marriage sense, is my motivation to get my way? Is it to vent frustration or to gain control? Or is it in a healthy way to protect my spouse, to build up my relationship with Robbie, and maybe to discover the truth, or to obey God? Maybe God's asked me to confront him or someone else. But I am never to confront to win. That's never the motivation in confrontation. We have to ask ourselves, is this an important enough issue to confront? Just like the underwear on the floor. That was an issue that Robbie and I had early in our marriage. He thought the clothes hamper was a basketball hoop, which was great when he made the shot, but when he missed a shot, he just stayed there beside the basketball hoop, you know. And that used to drive me nuts. But he came home every night. He was a good father. He was faithful to me, and in the long run, I could deal with the underwear on the floor. So is it worth the confrontation? Sometimes it's not worth the confrontation. I do confront if it leads to an issue that may affect me in the long run, or affect others, or affect his spiritual growth. There is a time to confront your spouse. But before confrontation, I believe that you have to agree in your heart, make the decision in your heart that you're willing to forgive that individual. And you also have to be open to correction or enlightenment. Most of the time, we have incomplete information with everyone. There's always, I believe very strongly that there's a reason why people do and say the things that they do and say. It makes sense to them. It may not make sense to us until we get all that information. The next level is connection. And that's on a physical, emotional, and also a verbal level. We connect physically, and a lot of that's just with the body language. If I'm trying to communicate with something with Robbie, and he's sitting here with his arms crossed like this, kind of leaning back in his chair, we're not connecting. We're not on the same level. Or if he's got the telephone of the remote in his hand watching the sports channel, and I'm trying to communicate to him, and he's doing ooh, look at that shot, you know. That's not communicating. We're not on the same level. The next one is personal information and revelation. We need to get to a point in our lives where we can share our past with our spouse. We can share our hopes and our dreams. We can share our struggles. And be able to do that freely and realize that we're not going to get pushback. We're going to be accepted for the decisions and the thoughts and the feelings that we have. And the last level is the intimate communication. This is a part where I'm able to share with Robbie dreams, when I can come to him and share with him my quiet time, what God's speaking to me personally. And it's just a whole different level. You want to add?
I think Nancy and I talked about this, and it impacted me so much. And I wrote this note again to me. I said, you'll never be intimate until you're first honest. So I'd encourage you to write that down. You will never be intimate until you're first honest. And honesty is the toughest thing. You know, we said early on, are you willing to look at yourself honestly? In week 1, we said, am I willing to put my life up next to the scripture and see how my life looks? And I think the thing that we want you to get, as Nancy continues, is all 6 of these We want to get to intimate, but here's where we find people most of the time. They're stuck on number 3. It's constant conflict. And that's as deep as that conversation goes. I'm sometimes, when we do counseling a lot, and I'll hear people say, and a lot of times I'll meet with a guy, and Nancy will meet with his wife, and he'll share something that's really, it's really darn personal. And I go, well, have you shared that? Well, oh no. You'll share it with me, but you've never told your wife that? Wow. Now that right there is telling. And that's the kind of thing we look for when people come to meet with us. We go, really? So you'll tell me something so personal like that, and you've never shared that with the person that you're more in love with than anybody else on the planet. You see what's happening? They're staying at conflict and they can't get to connection. They're not connecting verbal, nonverbal. I call it direct and indirect. We have direct communication and indirect. The rolling of the eyes. That's indirect communication. Because when Nancy says something, if I roll my eyes, what does that just tell her? What you said doesn't mean anything. It really wasn't that important. You got something else? That's indirect communication. And most people are stuck. But we want, with all of our might, to get to intimate. But you can't get intimate until you get to trust. And I say this all the time to our church. And this is true about Nancy and I, but it was true about Jesus. And this was a saying that we have around here. It says, Jesus only tells his intimate stuff to people that he's intimate with. Because I have people tell me all the time, I don't ever hear him. He doesn't speak, or I don't. Well, let me ask you a question. Are you intimate with him? See, I only tell intimate stuff to people I'm intimate with. Now, I can share this with you honestly. Those first 10 years, we were probably around 1, 2, and 3. We really never got down to, there were some things about my life personally I never told Nancy until years later. For reasons of embarrassment, what she would think about me, how she would react to my past, things that I was holding back because I didn't want her to have any other view that I'm the greatest guy on the planet kind of mentality. I wanted her to think, I'm every man she ever grew up thinking that she wanted to be married to, wrapped into one body. And I didn't want to share those personal things that would taint her view of me and stop the fact that we were communicating. And it wasn't until years into our marriage, I don't even know what year it was, but years until we were really intimate. Because there's 4 things that we talked about this week. We want to be intimate spiritually. We want to be intimate physically. We want to be intimate emotionally. All men think this, and we want to be intimate sexually. But I can't do that until I'm honest with myself. And would it be pretty cool as a couple? And let me ask a question. This kind of maybe see how y'all are doing. But when was the last time you walked into your spouse at the right time and said, man, let me tell you what Jesus is speaking to me in my quiet times. Let me tell you what he's saying to me. Can I share with you what he said to me yesterday as I was reading? When was the last time you did that? You see, if you haven't done that in a long time, then from a spiritual standpoint, you're not being intimate. Regardless of how ridiculous you might think it is, it might be the one thing she needs to hear.
And I think going along with that, is I think there were times when Robbie felt like he couldn't be intimate with me about his past because I didn't give him a safe place to land. In his mind, he was afraid that I might judge him, that I might try to correct something, because I'm good at that. I'm one of those silent manipulators. I was going to work it out. And there comes a point where we as wives have got to give our husbands a safe place to fall, because they're going to fall. They're human. We've got to allow them grace. We seem to allow grace for everybody else in our life, but sometimes we don't for that significant other. The next part, we're going to talk about communication, and I really prayed about this week because a lot of this stuff we're going to be sharing is nothing new. However, my words are empty, but the Word of God is powerful and it's active, and it brings healing it brings conviction. So I'm going to be using a lot of scripture today. And we're going to talk, I know Robbie did several months ago about the power of the tongue, so we're going to kind of go back over that also. In James 1, 22 through 25, and this is my challenge for us all today. It says, do not merely listen to the word and so deceive yourselves. Do what it says. For whoever intently looks into the perfect law that gives freedom and continues in it, not forgetting what they have heard, but doing it, they will be blessed in what they do. I don't know about you guys, but I've spent most of my life in church hearing and agreeing with, but not doing. So let's bring God into this equation called marriage. Let's give him some room to work, and by obeying his word, by obeying what he tells us to do, I believe it brings health, and I believe it brings healing. So I challenge you today to not only listen with your ears, but to do, to take God at his word. I challenge you to challenge him, to prove that his word is true, and to prove that by doing it, we will be blessed in what we do. In Proverbs 18:21, it says, the tongue has the power of life and death, and those who love it will eat its fruit. So the words that come out of our mouth, if they can bring death, I've done it to him, I've done it to my children before. I brought death to them by the words I would speak to them. But it also brings life. And I believe that the tongue, once we bridle it, once we learn how to speak according to God's word, that it's powerful. And it brings healing, and it brings healing in a hurry. In Ephesians 5:25 and 26, it says, husbands, love your wife, just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her, to make her holy, cleansing her by the washing with water through the word. When Jesus called us, and when we came to know the Lord, I don't know about you guys, but I was in filth. He died for me when I was yet a sinner. And the way he washed me, the way he made me clean was through his word. His word is powerful. And in the same way, I believe that the words that we speak to one another as husbands and wives can cleanse us. I don't know about you guys, but if Robbie cussed me and just gave me a huge tongue lashing, very seldom do I come back and say, gosh, I really needed that. I really needed that. That's not the reaction that most of us get. But I believe that our powerful words, our positive, upbuilding words, can make a huge difference in a marriage. I believe, honestly, that if we can wrap our heads around and put this tool underneath our belt of learning how to communicate positively and learn how to build each other up with words, I believe our marriages will make a 360. I just honestly believe that God can turn it around.
Because we've learned through our own personal life, with the counseling we've done, is that what we find most of the time, most people want to be right and not reconciled. And so we choose the words that we speak to make us right more than choosing the correct words which would make us reconciled. That's huge, y'all. We choose the words to say to one another so that I'll be right. I'm not choosing the correct words to make me reconcile. Whether it's this relationship, the ones I have with Joel, a friend or a co-worker, or a boss, or a child, or an in-law or an outlaw, whatever you call them. I mean, we want to be.
Word.
Okay, yeah, wrong word. I'm sorry. See, I'm a work in process. See, but that's what we do. So when you think about this, when Nancy gives you this, that we wash each other, there's only one way to do that, and that's by speaking the truth in love. But we wash one another by the words we speak. And if we're constantly focused on being right, the words we will use will not wash. Trust me.
In James 3, it talks about our words. And it says, when we put bits into the mouths of horses to make us obey us, we can turn around that whole animal. Or take ships, for example. Although they are so large and driven by strong winds, they are steered by a very small rudder wherever the pilot wants to go. So our words, as small as they are, can make huge differences for the positive. However, also, it says the tongue is a small part of the body, but consider what a great forest is set on fire by a small spark. Just our words, just like Robbie said before. I've worked with women that have suffered physical and emotional abuse. And they will tell me that they could endure the physical. It was the words that he spoke that were devastating. So we need to learn how to communicate to our spouses correctly. The first one is the right tone. I think we all know, I think us women are pretty good at this, about saying things, giving directions but with the wrong tone. Just that little sarcasm. In Proverbs 15:4, it says, a soothing tongue is a tree of life, but a perverse tongue crushes the spirit. In Ephesians, it says that with all humility, gentleness, patience, showing tolerance for one another in love. And in Proverbs 15, verse 1, it says, a gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. It's true. It's all in the way you say it. It's all in the way you say it. Number 2 is enough time. There's that verse that says, don't let the sun go down on your anger. But I think sometimes we need to pick times to have discussions when we have enough time to work it through. That's why I encourage married couples to set up a date night. Ours is Thursday night, always has been. Don't call me on Thursday night because I won't answer. I think it's important for us as couples to get together at least one night a week. Shut the phones off, put them away, find a babysitter, we used to put the kids to bed at 8 o'clock, even as teenagers, say, don't open your bedroom door. Do not leave your bedroom. I don't care how late you stay open, but do not come downstairs. This is our time together. So that way we have time to discuss things.
And that's a key for us that we say to every couple that we meet with. If you don't have a date night, you're setting yourself up for failure. Now, here's what I mean about that. If I don't say anything else to you today, I want you to hear this. That night for her, when she understands that I'm committed to it, no matter what goes on in life, I mean, whatever. And as a pastor, I've had to tell churches, listen, unless you're dying, unless you're on life support, seriously. I mean, some of you have been with me a long time. I've said this, and I mean it. Because what happens the moment I take that phone call and we're on our date night, that just told her she's less important to me than what was on the other end of this phone. And how many times do we do that? How many times do we talk to each other and all the time we're talking, we're, got you. What was that? And I'm not going to get on it because some of you fixing, I know fixing to blow a gasket when I start talking about telephone. Y'all know how I feel about them. Well, I'm going to go ahead anyway. They're great things if they're used properly. But those things have destroyed more relationships than anything I know. Because the moment Stephen sends me a text or something and I'm responding rather than, that just shot Nancy to the ground. Because date night for me says to her, you're the most important thing on this planet. It gives us chances to talk. Now, y'all remember we raised 5 teenagers at one time. We were dirt poor. Anybody raised a teenager? They're expensive. Trust me. Right? So it's not like we just every Thursday night had tons of money to go, but we got creative. Cup of coffee, making the popcorn. As she said, don't come out of that room or I'll kill you. We're down there having popcorn, watching a movie. No, you can't watch it with us. I mean, we did whatever. We got creative because we wanted each of us to know that night was our night. It still is. Now, sometimes we'll change it, make it a Saturday night if something comes up we got to do. But all in all, for the last 20 years or so, we've been doing that. We didn't do that the first 14 years of our marriage. And we suffered because of it. Here's how we talk to each other in passing. You're raising 5 kids. You know, we're going to football practice, basketball practice, cheerleader practice, you know, this, I mean, it was just like 2 ships in the night, and we were trying to do smoke signals, you know? Right? Anybody know what I'm talking about? And then you wonder why your marriage is in trouble. Because you've made it the least of the priority, not the greatest.
Number 3 is the right time. In Proverbs 15:28, it says, the heart of a righteous weighs its answers, but the mouth of the wicked gushes evil. There's a right time to confront, there's a right time to talk. I'll never forget when the kids were younger, I was a stay-at-home mom, and in my neighborhood, all the other mothers worked, so I was at home with 3 little kids all day long. So the moment Robbie walked through that door at 5 o'clock, I'm just like this, asking him many different questions, asking him what he had for lunch, and that was the wrong time to ask him anything. He needed to have his downtime. So as hard as it was, we tried to give him his 30 minutes. That's about as far as you're going to go with that, 30 minutes, just for his downtime, because that was the wrong time to talk to him. When Robbie wants to talk finances with me, don't do it at 10 o'clock at night, because I'm almost in bed. Now, that's my bedtime, and I don't do finances. Hit me first thing in the morning where my head's clear, but there's certain times that there are certain things that need to be discussed. The next one is, number 4 is an atmosphere of trust. An atmosphere of trust. I think in marriage, we've got to always remember that the Bible says that when we become married, we become one. And it's a process of becoming one. But I think our mindset has got to change, where it's not me and Robbie, it's us in many ways. So when I put my spouse down, I am in essence putting myself down. When I gossip about my spouse to my best girlfriend, I'm putting my spouse down, I'm putting myself down. I have to be very careful what I talk about my husband with other people. Because I need to create that atmosphere of trust. I need to create that safe space for him to come to. He needs to feel secure enough in my love that he can tell me anything, and I'm still going to be around. In Proverbs 31:11, it says, a husband has full trust and confidence in his wife and lacks nothing of value. When he's able to trust me and I provide him with that space to land, we lack nothing. The next one, number 5, is an atmosphere of truth. I heard this said recently. Jesus said that we're to speak the truth in love. Truth without love is brutal. Truth without love is brutal, but love without truth is meaningless. Ephesians 4:15 says, instead you should speak the truth in love, and as we do that, we grow to become in every respect the mature body of him who is the head, that is Christ. So our goal in speaking the truth in love is to speak the truth so that we can become like Christ. So we have to create an atmosphere where our spouse can be honest with us without retribution. The next one is 6. It is listen, and then listen some more. James 1:19 and verse 20 says, everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. Amen. Because human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires. I think Robbie's addressed that. So many times we are listening, we're not listening. We're trying to have a comeback. We're thinking about the comeback. And I work for an organization that works with children that have mental health diagnosis. And one of the things that we have to do is create plans of care around their underlying need. And I think so sometimes we have to be curious. We have to say, why is this child cutting? what's the underlying need there? And I think we need to develop that tool with our spouses. When Robbie comes home, he's never done this before, by the way, but if he were to come home and kick my dog, I'd be pretty ticked off if he kicked my dog. But when my husband comes in and he's angry and he kicks a dog, it may have absolutely nothing to do with me. It's probably what took place 8 hours before with someone else. And I think that's just a rule of thumb. We've got to look for that underlying reason. Why the sharp words? We need to listen. We need to be curious. We need to start asking questions. Because there's usually a reason why he did what he did, or why he said what he said. My mentor, who was the wife to his mentor, was Marion, was probably in her 70s. And she encouraged me to begin to pray with Robbie. Because when I pray and when he prays, the true intent of my heart comes out. And so when I listen to him pray for needs in his life, I need to start listening. Because he's asking God for things that maybe God has intended me to meet that need. And when I pray, my prayers are intimate because I'm talking to my daddy. And when I allow him to hear that, he hears what my heart is. So I encourage you, if you don't pray together, start. And it can be something short and sweet in the mornings. One of my favorite things in the world is for Robbie to bless me before I walk out that door in the mornings. I feel like I have a covering around me, and that just boosts my whole ego, my whole confidence. Number 8 is may your conversation be laced with grace. I think this is hugely important because we tend to extend grace to everyone around us except our spouses at times. And I know that's difficult sometimes because some of us are married to people that may not know the Lord, may not be walking with the Lord. Sometimes their words are difficult to hear. But again, I don't think anyone changed because of my nagging or my cussing out. So in Proverbs 16:24, it says, gracious words are a honeycomb. They're sweet to the soul and healing to the bones.
Amen.
Colossians 4:6 says, let your conversation be always full of grace, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how to answer everyone. And the last one, number 9, is honor and respect. Romans 10:12 commands us to be devoted to one another in love, and to honor one another above ourselves. I heard a speaker say the other day, and I'd never thought about it this way, but he said that he was, his father-in-law, who he loved very dearly, was on his deathbed. And he pulled him aside and he said, son, whatever you do, you take care of my daughter. You love my daughter. And the minute he spoke it, it was almost like God was saying to him, son, whatever you do, you love my daughter. Robbie is God's son, so God's my father-in-law. There are things that Robbie may do or say that I don't like, but I sure do love my father-in-law. My mother-in-law is not a believer. My earthly mother-in-law is not a believer. But I respect her, and I would never do anything intentionally to harm her son because I love Francis. I love my Father in heaven more than anything else. So I've got to learn not to disrespect his son. I know it's difficult because, and I think we'll get this later on in our teaching, is about honor and respect. A woman wants to be loved and cherished. A man wants to be honored. And sometimes that's difficult, I know, but that's the way, by me honoring him, I show him love. That's his love language, is for me to honor him. And I really thought about this because I really feel like if we can change our words, we can change our marriages. So I just challenge you. One of the things that I have tried to do on and off throughout my life, and I haven't been consistent with it, but is to try to keep a Thanksgiving journal. But I challenge us all to keep a Thanksgiving journal on our spouse. Find one thing every day you can compliment your spouse about. I heard a testimony recently of a woman that had an unbelieving husband. She was a Christian in a very unhappy marriage. And they were two ships that passed in the night. They just didn't communicate at all. But she had listened to a marriage seminar, and they encouraged her to do that, to find one thing every day to compliment your spouse on and verbalize it. Look at your spouse and say, I really appreciate you doing this for me. If it's something small. And she kept saying, Lord, I can't think of anything. I mean, I'm that desperate. I'm just stuck in this marriage. I can't think of anything. But she said the night before, he took the garbage out. So she thought, hey, there's a start. So she said the next morning, he's got a newspaper in his face, like normal for them, and they're having a cup of coffee, and she said, you know what? And she said, I really want to thank you for taking that garbage out last night. And she said, he slowly lowered the newspaper and he started crying. And he said, that's the first kind thing you've said to me in 10 years. And that's a shame, but how many of us go through life that way? For years, I took this man for granted. I just assumed he'd come home when he said he was going to come home, and he did. I just assumed he'd take care of me financially, and he did. I just assumed all these things, but I took him for granted. It took a car accident in both of our lives. We both were involved in a head-on collision, and two separate ones. And all of a sudden, everything I'd taken for granted, I realized God could snatch away from me in a second, just in a second. So I challenge you. The Bible says that we're commanded to take every thought captive. And for a long time, I just felt like my words and my thoughts were just random, that I just reacted with that. And God said, no, I wouldn't tell you to take them captive unless you can take them captive. So that's my encouragement today for me. It's encouragement for me to take every thought, every word that I speak captive. Because my words bring life or they bring death.
Amen. So two things. We're going to wrap this up. We're not done with the communicating, but this gets you started. Which level do you want to get to? And at the bottom of that, the success of it is based on how you do it. Picking the right time, the right tone, all that, the right truth. So here's the question I have for you. What have you learned? That was the very first question when we started. What have you learned? Have you learned what you're not doing? Have you learned what needs to change? And then the question then becomes, are you willing? Are you really, are you really willing? That's a toughie. Are you really willing to honestly look at you and say, Lord, I learned something that I didn't know, and now I'm ready to put, as Nancy said, to act upon it and to actually do it. Not talk about it. Not say, oh man, that was cool. I got some cool notes, and man, I'll share this with a friend. No, are you going to do this or not? And the second part of that is, so what have you learned about you? The second is, what have you learned about your spouse? So, we think we know each other, but if I can assure you, if your spouse hasn't come to you for multiple reasons and said, hey, can I share this with you? It's personal or intimate in a long time. It might be them. Now hang on. It might be them. But it also might be you. That it isn't safe for them to share. It isn't a trusting place for them to come and just get dead honest with you. But we need to get to intimacy in communication. We need to get there. But you can't get there if you can't even talk about the dog and, how you're going to raise a kid. I mean, plain, simple stuff. You can't get to the intimate part without doing the others. You with me? All right, here's the challenge. We're not done. We got a lot to do over these next few weeks. But if you're going to do this, you got to start putting into motion some of these things. So Nancy gave you a challenge. Start your journal. Start writing the things you're thankful for your spouse about. And then here's what I want you to do this week. And I want you to try something. Every day before they leave, I want you to speak those words, because that's how we wash each other with the watering of the word. I want you to try something simple. That's your application this week. Okay? And we took a little longer today, and I apologize, but we'll make it up to you later. All right? We got a couple things we need to do. And then if you're visiting with us, we're so glad you're here. We got tons of food. we want to just have time just to get together and hey, you learn more about each other when you're eating. So the way this is going to work is we're going to just food's out in the hallway, and there's 2 lines so we can get everybody fed. There's rooms in the back that got tables and chairs. On this first hallway, there's rooms and tables right here for you to eat. So just, make yourself at home. If you're our guest, we want you to, let us serve you. And if you need anything, please let us know that. But before you go, there's a couple of folks I need to introduce to you. Let me finish these announcements real quick, because I almost forgot. A lot is fixing to happen in the form of the internet. We really haven't worried. We have been trying to grow a church. We focus on growing people. And so Megan, where you at? Right there. She has taken on redoing the website. And she needs a team of people around her. So she's sitting down here. So if you want to help her, it kicks off next Sunday. We're going to launch it next Sunday, and she's going to do it for you and show you. But at the same time, she's doing something I never. I'm an old guy. I don't really. I told you I don't tweet and all that other stuff. I don't have a clue what all that means. I don't know what an Instagram is. It hit me in the side of the head. I wouldn't have a clue. But she did this thing on Facebook, which I don't know much about Facebook either. But that's our Facebook link, and it's called the Gathering Church GA. And the information it's going to be an open Facebook page. That's how you get we're going to try to reach out and let people know what we're doing. So she needs help doing all that. So y'all join her and become part of that team. Now, the guys in the back are killing it with doing all the media and all the stuff they're seeing. Now we're going to start putting the services on YouTube. We've had more people ask us, hey, are you videoing this? Because I wasn't able to be at the first service. So this week, Nathan tells me that the first 2 services are already going to be up, and then today will be up hopefully by tomorrow. So, if you want to encourage somebody, and we're doing that so that we can keep people involved in what we're doing. But these guys need help. I mean, they are here every Sunday. If you want to get involved with helping them with the media, putting everything up, we need your help. July 4th, just letting you know, that's a Wednesday. We're having no services here because pretty much everybody's going to be gone. Today, we just, again, if you're visiting with us, there's a card on your table, and it's called a connection card. There's a box on that little table there on the door. If you want to fill that out for us to connect with you, I'd love to contact you this week and just, get to know you, find out what's going on, and you fill that card out and drop it back there. But real quickly, I want these families to come on. The Barretts, y'all come on, and the Clovers, and